2. Rink. Okay, I can't, you know what, I gotta be honest, I can't be sure that I've actually got this all the tech set up for the recording, but we're gonna go with this. Because otherwise you're just gonna, instead of yoga, you're just gonna watch me monkeying around with cameras. Okay. Hey, so not in my usual, one of my usual spots here to practice, and that's okay. Hopefully at this, we had already said our Happy New Year's, hopefully at this point you have somewhere to practice. You can see that I've got mat set up down by the wall. Not strictly speaking necessary, but I think it's, again, anytime that we can add a little bit of padding, and especially non-slippery padding, it's going to help. So if you've got that, you could put your mat up near the wall just to give you a bit of extra support. Otherwise, there are a couple of moves where, strictly speaking, you don't absolutely have to have the prop. And I actually left out a few of the kind of poses today. I think what this might be is sort of like we've done in the past, kind of a round 1, round 2, or practice 1, practice 2. So we're going to do the more adventurous poses in this practice in a subsequent meeting. For today, we'll be pretty chill. And actually, one of the questions that I got today was specifically around whether this would be a practice that would work in the sense of, well, someone dealing with an injury, and they didn't, not sure that moving, certainly not vigorous movement, would be a great idea. So it wasn't him. He's just trying to get my attention, so I'll take him outside. Thanks, bud. So, and I wanted to just say that at the outset, exactly what I had said to the person who inquired, which is today's practice is super breath focused, okay? Which is to say, if you're breathing, you're kind of already doing it, but both the moves are meant to themselves, the poses and positions are meant to create some space in our body and to aid breathing in some way, shape, or form. Now, truth be told, and I'm not lying, but I mentioned in the email that today's practice is very much inspired by a teacher who I respect. Her name is Katy Bowman. I want to give her the shout out right off the bat. It's Katy Bowman, if you want to check her out. In particular, for our participants who are identified with women's bodies, you're living in a woman's body, or that's how you identify. Katy, I know, she's a prodigious writer, and she has produced so many really amazing, like, blow me away books exploring movement. She's not strictly speaking just a yogi. She does movement. In fact, if someone asked me what Katy Bowman's deal was specifically, I would say walking, healthy walking, and foot health, and so on. She's really, really big into that. And specifically, I should say, also into natural movement. So a complement of movements that we would use in the course of our lives normally, like hanging and jumping and what have you. So some that there's I guess what I would say is in a Venn diagram of yoga, or traditional hatha yoga, and then Katy Bowman, there's massive overlap, but there are some differences. Okay, so what I'm sharing with you today, and the reason I specifically make the plug here, is because I'm not going to offer, unless I get questions, which you can always ask, much in the way of rationale or explaining the biomechanics of what's going on and so on. But if you are interested, and rather than me, offering my own take or sort of roughly plagiarizing, I thought that you might want to check her out. And so you don't have to, the brilliant thing about the time that one of the brilliant things about the time that we're living in is you don't have to go and study with her. You don't have to go and check her out in a workshop necessarily. You don't even have to buy or borrow one of her books, although if you were going to, I would suggest her kind of seminal work is it's called Move Your DNA, like move your body. It's amazing, okay? No, in fact, all of what I'm sharing today is taken from her annual Advent calendar. She does a movement Advent, which I think is just such a great idea each December, and she did that again this year. I think it was her 7th or 8th annual. And I often, or I should say I always now, follow that, follow her posts. So someone to follow, there's so much garbage. Sorry, I know, Yogi, not supposed to be not judgmental, but there is so much garbage online and on social media specifically, but what Katy Bowman throws up there, not that. It is the opposite of that. So you might want to check her out. Okay? Now, that being said, that little kind of prelim setup, it's a breath focus practice that we're going to engage in today. And so what I had sort of mentioned and then dropped that thought, I want to pick it back up. If you were practicing and any of these particular moves isn't sitting right with you today, it's either you're hurt or you're tired or it's just not working, okay? We have to recognize that obviously I'm limited and, well, right now it's all black screens, which is totally fine. But I'm limited, even if people's screens are on, in being able to virtually diagnose what's going on and give you some sort of intelligent adjustment or assist. It's just too tricky. So the simple way to approach this, I would suggest, is if it feels good, more of it. If it feels challenging, proceed with caution but interest. And if it feels like pain, stop. Okay? And don't wait. Certainly don't wait for permission or for my say so. The classic example of this would be, and you'll see that if I was to move out of the way here, I've got my feet together, kind of heels together, and knees together, and I often like to sit in this position because it's one that I frequently sit in as a result of yoga practice, as a result of my yoga asana practice. This was not always a healthy, happy position for the fronts of my ankles. In fact, even now, like the amount of time that I'm sitting here right now, if you went back a few years, I would have been in excruciating pain, rolling out of the pose, and just, it would not have been yoga, it would have just been torture, right? So don't torture yourself, do yoga, practice yoga. So don't wait for my say so, like if we were here, the reason I raise this is that we've had classes where I'll be sitting in this position or a position like it for an extended period of time. And people, the odd time get a question, can I move? Yes. If it's not comfortable, don't stay in it. Okay. Now, this set of practices, and I guess the theme that Katy was pulling from this year, and that we're going to be working with today, is movement for breathing. And I can say, this was my practice the last week. Not necessarily in the order that we're going to practice them today, but I took on these postures, these poses, in lieu of a more active practice because I wasn't feeling great. And my kind of big takeaway was, as I'm sort of want to do, that the feeling we often have is that unless we're getting our heart rates up, which is a good thing, or breaking a sweat, which also can be a good thing, we're somehow doing less. And I want to really, let's disabuse ourselves of that notion. And I did last week actively by doing the practice, and in doing so, recognizing that I actually felt amazing afterward, which doesn't mean that you have to or that you will necessarily, no promises, feel that way. But I certainly, and my breathing was deeper and more free, less kind of encumbered by my body. So there you go, there's the plug. So open minds, open hearts, and we'll get breathing. Prop-wise, you may want, you can see here I've got a yoga block. That actually in some ways might not even be ideal. Like you could have something a little bit longer for one of the moves that we're going to make. Can I find it? Yes. Hold on a second, I'm going in my little toy box here, that's why I went off camera. So here's this is like a foam roller, okay, a knobby foam roller. And you can see it's a little bit longer than a block. Okay, a few inches, and there's a reason that might be more useful. Okay, when we get to that particular move, I'll show you. But even if you didn't have either of those things, you can do the move that I'm talking about which is going to involve bringing our hands behind us without the prop, without the block, okay? So that's one. You may also want to have either a yoga strap, okay? Say if we were doing a move like this, okay, and you can't get your hands together, we can connect our hands using the strap, or simply, you know, a rag or a towel, or I've got this, just digging around and looking for scarves, you know, anything works, right? So you can kind of be in the same shape and just use the, in this case, I don't know what this is, it's almost like a blanket, but it's a scarf, to bring the hands closer together, okay? So if you've got those, awesome. If you don't, no biggie, okay? Ready to roll, ready to rock and roll, ready to rumble? Okay. Some of the I should say too, I obviously took the picture that's normally here off the wall, hence the screw. Some of these moves will be standing, some of them will be seated, some are in other positions. I think we're pretty much just standing or seated today, but it's really this practice, and I'm coming back to that original question, which I keep picking up and then dropping, was can I do this practice if I'm injured or if I can't do particular moves? And the short answer is, you bet. You could actually sit down, okay, like I'm doing right now, and do the whole practice just like this. Practice with breathing, paying attention and staying with your breath, and not worrying too much about the moves, or you know, picking and choosing, dropping the ones that are not working for you and doing only those ones that feel good, okay? Because very much so, like with each of these poses, what we're gonna do is hold them for a period of time. And one last little bit, I know there's a lot of setup, but the rationale is kind of important for this practice. So, and then we'll get into doing yoga instead of talking about yoga. What's an example? Okay, Warrior 2, to give you an example, which you could go into if you wanted to, but you certainly don't have to. So if I was set up here? Yep. Okay. If I was set up, boom, boom, in a Warrior 2 pose, and we held this for say 10 to 20 breaths, okay, and I'm actually going to just hold it for one breath. So that would be inhale, exhale. Okay, so it's kind of a rough 4 count inhale, exhale. That's one breath cycle. What we're going to aim to do is to be in these various shapes for around 10 breath cycles. And in fact, if you were to check out Katy Bowman's post, she talks about 10 to 20. As you obviously all will know, I've got a fairly active practice. There were a few of these when I got up around 15 breaths. It was like I actually had to cut it off and say, like, that's enough, because I was chugging, I was struggling. And I raise that because if you get to 5 breaths, 6 breaths, 7 breaths, and you're really, it feels like a lot, back off, okay? Less effort, you know, come out of the pose somewhat, and then you can always re-enter, okay? And that's it. Any questions at all? Okay. I'm just going to deal with one thing. Just give me half a second, and then we're really rolling. Hey, Chris, just so you know, your singing is coming on camera. There you go. I know it's more just so that you didn't worry, but it's lovely, actually. That's okay. Don't worry. Pandemic practice, right? In fact, one of the poses actually involves vocalization, so we'll see if we get there. All right, so pose the first. We're going to aim to do this because we have 2 triceps. We're going to go for 10 per arm, okay? So what we're going to do here is use the wall. So you're going to get the back of me here. If I could move the camera around, I actually practice this one mostly not on a wall, but in a door frame. Like actually use one side of the door and then the other side of the door, okay? But the process is just like this. What we want to do is open up the inner rib cage. So what we're going to do, and you can do this, so standing by your whatever wall you've got in your vicinity, okay, is you're going to inhale and bring the arm up. Okay, you can see I've brought my arm up right there by my ear. And then exhale and drop the hand, and I'll move closer here, down. It might be up here at your neck, depending on your range of motion, or it might sneak down further, sort of to the top edge or between your shoulder blades in that sort of direction, okay? And then the sort of classical yoga move here would be to reach the hand up, okay, and give it a little helper. Instead, we're going to use the wall, okay? So we're going to step up. We're going to get our bodies really close to the wall, okay? You can actually even begin by extending your arm up, and then exhale, bring it down, and then we're just going to breathe. And really emphasize breathing into the side of the body that is open. And I'm going to do what's the hardest part of this practice for me. There's your second breath. And I'm going to try to remain as quiet as I can. Okay, I'll jump in a couple of times just to let you know what breath. This is your third. You might be on. And otherwise, you can just practice on your own. You can see here as I take my fifth breath, halfway point. And I'm actually holding on to the wall for a bit of support, just to really hold myself in there. So make adjustments as you see fit. Watch that the head isn't coming forward. Really try to bring the head up as much as you can and the arms beside the head. Eighth breath. Nine. And really on our last one, let's aim at maximum relaxation. So not efforting the breath, just inhaling into your ribs and exhale. And then we'll release the arm. Let it just come down the wall. And we'll move into the other side. So just turning in the other direction, okay? We can inhale and bring the arm up. Okay, exhale and bring it down, and I'm going to turn into the wall, even though it means I'm turning away from you. And then here we breathe. And notice that like my tendency, I actually brought one foot right up in the air, okay, to kind of compensate and get a little bit closer. Try not to do that. See if you can sink your weight evenly into your feet, even if it means, so I kind of raised my inner foot, even if it means that you aren't quite as close to the wall, okay, and breathing. So if it feels like your breath is racing, or you're speeding your breath up in order to get done your cycle, don't do that. Slow it down. Here's 5. And you might notice that you get a bit more range of motion, that you can work your fingers down, breathe. But don't make that the objective, make that a side effect. Breaths get longer, especially exhales. And finally, last breath, the most relaxed one. Inhale. And sigh. And we'll release out of that. And then now, not part of the pose technically, I'm just going to lose the glasses here. I need those at some point just to refresh my memory. But so now, if you're feeling like me, which is a little bit kind of tight in here, which makes sense, we've raised the arm up and then bent it down, and we've compressed the muscles, the kind of, you know, what you would kind of grab in here, that upper part of the muscle group that's actually, it connects here, your collarbone, but it's part of the upper back here, the trapezius. In any case, if you're feeling tight in here, let's just bring this down. roll through and come down. Don't pop the ribs. Keep the ribs nice and quiet. But just rolling the shoulders, especially on the down. And you can even kind of just stay low. All right. Nice. Okay. Give the arms a little shake. Second pose. Okay. Second pose is essentially a version of downward facing dog, actually. And look, at this point, if you wanted to take a 10 breath or 10, 15 breath dog, like regular dog on the mat, you could totally do that. But this is, and there are versions, like if I imagined, I do have a ledge over there, but I get too close to you. Imagine that you had any sort of ledge or a table that's low. Another version of dog that works if the wall isn't accessible is just to put your hands or even your lower arms onto a table and to tilt the pelvis forward. So rather than tucking your tail like this, we're really letting the tail come back. So, you know, be proud, let that bum really, boom, okay, pop out there. And then you bring yourself down. Now that's going to give you a nice stretch through the back of the legs in all likelihood, and a stretch through here, okay, if you were on a table or on a ledge. What we're going to do though, and this is an effort to, or a non-effort if you will, to open up the thoracic, so your chest, your back, up high as opposed to down low, okay? So how do we do this? What we're going to do is we're going to bring our arms, both arms, onto the wall, okay, like here, and then we're going to step out a little bit, okay, as much as is comfortable. And you can see I'm sliding my elbows down the wall here, okay? It doesn't really matter how far out you get, but we really want to, again, no tuck, we want to tilt the pelvis, and then feel like, and I'm just going to come out of the pose for a second, so if you're looking at me, we're going to feel like we're opening from the center, or from our sternum, okay? All of that is spreading open. The shoulder blades are going to come a little bit together, but we're not pinching them together, we're just pulling everything open, and we're using the resistance of the wall to help us to get there, okay? So here's your standing dog, okay? So step out and breathe. And if it feels like you're pushing into your joints and that becomes tender at all, just ease off a bit. Full deep breathing here. And although we are stretching our thoracic, so the upper part of our spine and our rib cage, really feel as much as you can like you're breathing into this hollowed out belly. And I say hollowed out because it may feel that way being up against the wall like this. Keep breathing. And certainly if this becomes painful at all, we're about halfway. You can just come up like that, take the stress out of your shoulders, okay, and then drop back in for our second half. Say 2 more nice, deep, long breaths. Okay, and slowly, gently come up. Ooh, and again, in the same way that we felt tender up at the top here, you might feel it at the front of your shoulders. So just give them a little, what do we call this? Swing, okay? Or you can kind of swing side to side. This one feels nice too. Almost like if you had like a rock or something and you were gonna like be throwing it onto the pile, you pick the rock up, throw, rock, throw, rock, throw. And you know, I'm popping my heels here. It's really just about bringing a little ease back into our shoulders. Okay, now Here's where you may want to, for our next pose, is a nice counter movement to that, okay? And the reason where I say that is where we just were is that we had flexed our shoulders, okay? Like that's a flex, okay, for our shoulders. I'm not gonna bother you with the anatomical directions, trust me, that's flex. This is extend. And so you'll notice, in fact, even if you just do this right now, take your without dipping your shoulders too far forward, the fronts of them, you wanna keep them back as much as you can, but just bring your arms behind you and notice our range of extension, because we're built to operate in a forward way. It's going to be a lot less than our ability to flex for the most part. And we have things like frozen shoulder, or people have injuries or whatever, where getting up much higher than this, or even this can be difficult, to come up into arms overhead. But for most of us, the range backwards is going to be a lot less. Okay, and try this right now. If you bring your arms back and you get to what feels like the full extent of your extension, you'll notice, at least I notice, that my arms tend to separate, like kind of sweep out away from each other. Okay? So here's the trick. If you've got a block, okay, what we're gonna do, and the prescription here would be not to like grip the block and hold on to it, but rather just hold it with a gentle pressure between the palms of your hands. Okay, so we can start almost like you're gonna sit on the block, just by putting it, or what, again, this could be anything. All right, see, it doesn't have to be a yoga block. Mark Twain, okay? Sit on Mark Twain, sit on the book, and it's a little tricky not to grip it. That's the only reason I'm gonna go back to the block, but you certainly could, and that's also, the book is a fair bit heavier than the block, so you don't want something that's too heavy. But if you just sit on your block, so to speak, you're standing. Okay, and then from here, what we're going to do is simply bring the hands back any amount. Okay, so I can feel a little shake in here. So it's just a gentle pressure. We're not trying to break the block in half. If this is like you can't get your hands close enough to do that, that's where you would be moving to a larger. Let's see here, I've got the roller. That's actually, for me, that's a fair bit easier. Okay, but it's really about just getting your hands moving toward one another gently, and then moving your arms back in space and breathing. Now, one more breath, and then we're going to break for a second, and I'm going to just demo one other little addition. Okay, it's this. So you can just put your prop down for a second if you want. I'm going to give you a look here if you want to peek at me. If you haven't been looking at the camera, here's where you can do that. This isn't technically part of that pose. This could be part of every single pose in this practice. In fact, this could be something you do all day or like at various points throughout your day. And it's a way of avoiding text neck, okay, the kind of this, where all of the muscles in the front get super tight and crunchy and the back get loose and stretched out and you're in pain, right? So what we actually, there are a whole bunch of prescriptions for that would include the upper back and the shoulders and so on. But in the simplest terms, notice this. If you actually just go into the regular way that we look at our phones, the head comes way forward of the body, okay? Which means that it's going to, instead of weighing, 10, 15 pounds, it's going to be the equivalent of more like 40, 50 pounds of weight because it's not stacked on our spine. How do we deal with this? We're going to take our chin and our, from the chin, we're going to ramp it back. So it's just, okay? We get as long as we can in the neck there. The chin's going to tuck a little bit, almost like you're trying to create a double chin, okay? Interestingly, I think vanity gets in our way here. Sometimes people, thrusting their chins out to like eliminate any sort of pouchiness here. But the reality is this is an extended position. It's not so great. So we want to come back, okay? And that's better. Now, reach for your prop, okay? Head is ramped back and breathe. And you can see I'm doing it this time kneeling rather than standing. Might be a little bit tricky, not quite high enough if you're sitting, but you get the idea. One more breath. Let's make it our most present, our most mindful. Breathe in, into your belly. Ramp the head back. Keep the arms in position and exhale. All right. And that one, my friends, can be a fair bit of work. Counter stretch. And by the way, these little moves and counter stretches aren't technically part of Katy's series, but they're ones that I employ all the time and I kind of like them. So if you're like me, having the arms back like that, again, we're getting a little tension build up in here. So one way that I like to counteract that is to bring the arms out like you're from your body, like you're in a T, okay? And then with palms down, simply take your thumbs and flip them back. Ah, there it is. And then flip them forward and take your thumbs back. So it's just boom. And if it feels kind of loose and crunchy in there, okay, as you're doing this move, you can think about hugging the arm bone into the shoulder joint. So it's kind of like and it comes in, and then try that, okay? You can even try it with one arm first just to see. So hug it in, and it's probably gonna feel, the joint itself will just feel a lot more stable. You may have a little bit less range of motion, but that's okay, okay? And then try it reaching out. And notice the difference, how much looser and less supported, less stable we're feeling. I'm talking about in here, right? Okay? So both arms. You can also just play with this. Have one hand in one direction, one in the other, and twist, and turn, and breathe with the action. Okay? And then shake it out. Let it go. Okay. Pose the next. Where are we going here? Well, let's, shall we, do a couple that are on the ground, okay? So not using the wall for these next couple, but that's okay. So we're going to start slow with a little bit of twisting. I would suggest, and those of you practice, when we practice together all the time, you know this, prop your bum up, raise your hips up higher than your knees, and then you can organize your legs however you wish. See, I'm in a cross-legged position here, okay? A hand can come to each knee, okay? So right hand on the right knee, left hand on left knee, good, okay? And really remember the block or the raised height, if you were sitting on your lower legs, is all about making it easier for your body to stack itself on the spine without slumping or falling, okay? So we're gonna move through. This is probably the most dynamic pose of the practice, in that we are gonna move into the twist, but we're gonna do a held twist, okay? So if you can certainly either do this with me, as long as we haven't got any compression issues in our spine. I would emphasize for all of us as we move into this pose, let's take an inhale and feel like your head is coming up toward the ceiling. And at the same time, your hips are dropping down. So inhale up. Exhale, keep that height. We always want to make our spine as long as we can before we twist, okay? And then the first one, just to show you what we're actually not going to be doing, would be exhale, right hand comes to left knee and twist, okay? And don't slump into the twist, stay nice and proud. Ramp that head back, okay? And then switch, left hand to right knee. And switch, right hand to left knee. And we'll make this our last one of the more dynamic, and switch. So in a vinyasa class, like in a class where we're flowing and moving with breath, that sort of dynamic twisting is frequently where we go. And that's great for what it is. Absolutely. In fact, that's most of the time, that's what the kind of thing that I would do naturally. That's what, sort of calls out to my bod. But there's a lot to be said for a held twist. So what we're going to do, let's go kind of 3 to 5 breaths per side. If it doesn't feel uncomfortable to stay for the full 5, do that. If you need to come out earlier, do that. Okay? So just setting yourself up for success. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, right hand comes to left knee. Left hand comes out to the side. You can just tent the fingers, looking perhaps over your left shoulder, and breathe. And don't feel like you're trying to twist yourself open or anything. Just stay here in a gentle twist. So if it feels like you've gone to your full range of motion, like I could certainly open this up more, and I'd be shaking and kind of really efforting, just back off. Okay, kind of 80% effort, or maybe even less. Breathe. Notice how the shape of your body impacts. Inhale. Exhale. The shape of your breath. Parts of your torso are more open than they might be. Other parts, very much more closed. One last breath. As you exhale, unwind. Okay. Just take a moment. Okay. And then, when you're feeling ready, we're going to move in the opposite direction. So, inhale up. Lengthen that spine. Exhale. Twist. And it's also, you can have a little micro movement here where you inhale and just ever so slightly come out of the twist, and exhale. Deepen. Inhale. Notice that I tend to default to closing the eyes, and that's really just because I'm going inside, right? I'm not avoiding you or the light shining on me. It's all about just feeling the feels, right? Which I think once you shut down the visual sensory network, if you will, close your eyes, those feels become a little bit easier to feel. Last breath. And okay, and then you may want just a gentle counter twist, one direction, the other. Good. Okay, so notice how you're feeling there. Now before we go to our next one, I want to be clear, this pose where we're going next could be done standing, it could be done sitting. I think it could even really, in some ways, it could be done lying down. Now, I'm going to get another prop here. The version that Katy Bowman teaches involves using a TheraBand, okay, a band of some sort. You can see here I've got, hi buddy, I've got a couple of bands, okay, of different varieties. The stretchy bands like you'd have for exercising. But here's the thing, I think that what does she suggest? Using tights, like if you have an extra set of tights, you could use the tights for this. I'm going to also show you a hands-only, like a non-bound version, because really the binding of your ribs is more about giving yourself feedback, okay? So if you were, I'll show it to you just so that you know where we're going. Our bind point would be sort of at about sternum level, okay? So just below where our chest would be or breast would be, okay? And really, if you were going to bind, okay, it would just be to tie it around. That's amazing. And break the band. Nope, that ain't gonna work. Let's try this one. That band is an old one, and I think I've already ripped it a couple of times. So, let's see. Okay, it's like that. And you can see how you could use like a towel or like she said, tights would work here. And the idea is that we're going to breathe and try to kind of wing out and expand this as much as we can. Okay, now that I've shown you what this could look like, I'm going to take it off because the version I like is actually prop free. Okay, we can give ourselves props all the time. Double entendre there, a little yoga joke. Okay, the way you would do this is to take your hands to your hips, okay, thumbs behind, so you can see I'm sliding my thumbs in behind, and then simply lift up, okay? Now, this supposes that you've got the range of motion in your arms and chest and everything to bring your hands up into your side ribs. If you don't, band, okay? And what we're gonna do here is inhale, exhale, and really, it's less about pressing the band pressing in or the hands pressing in. Instead, feel like you are moving your hands by breathing, inhaling into them. Inhale. Good. You'll notice here, especially if you're using your hands, that the ribs actually on the inhale separate from one another. You get some more space, okay? And as you exhale, they get closer, okay? Second round, notice where your head is, ramp it back, okay? Broaden those collarbones. Take the shoulders back a little bit and breathe. And if you're using your hands, can you breathe especially less into your fingertips that I'm wiggling up at the front here, and more into your thumbs, which you won't see, okay, on my body, but you will hopefully feel on yours. Try to breathe into your back body as well as your side. 5 more breaths at your own pace. Try to make them maximally delish. Not effort, but like they're literally feeding you, they're rejuvenating you. Watch that the shoulders aren't riding up unnaturally. Watch that the head isn't falling forward, perhaps naturally but unhealthily. And one more breath. Hands can come out of there. Strap, if you're using it, will lose it, okay? And then from here, I'm going to give you an option. Now, if I had this again would be where we wouldn't be using the wall so much, we'll be using a post. But the idea is it's a variation on one that we've already done. It's actually, I think, a bit of an easier variation. So you might start there. The only reason I didn't start in terms of our practice is that I thought it would be easier to visualize or to get a sense without a post if we did it the first time, by extending using the block. Really the play here, we can lose the block, is just to use a door frame, okay, which I don't have. I only have a corner here. But what I'm actually going to do, I'm trying to work this out. This is actually kind of good because we all have different spaces we're moving or working or living in. So to try to figure out how to make them work for you. Now, if I grab onto this corner with my hands like that behind me, it's not going to work. I'm going to slide. But just in terms of getting up near the wall here and trying to use it like you would use a post or a door frame, what I notice is if I turn my hands and grip like that, one hand, and then the other hand like that, now I've got a grip, okay? So I'm going to take the hands behind. I'm going to really grab onto that wall, okay? So I've got both sets of hands on the wall. And then I'm going to step out, 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 not, you know, trying to fool my body by bringing my head super forward. So back it up a little bit, and then breathe there, okay? And alternatively, if this is just like, too many gimmicks, dude, I just want to breathe, we can simply bring the hands in behind and come into a forward fold. In fact, lacking the post, this is where I'm going to go. But the post version feels super nice. If you are keeping your hands there, maybe switch the grip. Gently come back. Take the wall. There we go. Almost like if you've got an actual post or a door frame where you can get some purchase, you can almost lean, and that's going to really emphasize, and less leaning with the head and more leaning with the body to emphasize that opening. Okay, and let's release there. Ooh, all right. Moving on, where do we want to go here, and how am I doing time-wise? Just bear with me for half a second. Oh my goodness, we're almost at it. All right, hold on a second. Let's do part 2 of the tricep stretch. So we had the tricep stretch on the wall. That's actually, we can again use the wall, but we're going to use it on a second arm. So there is a yoga pose, which I found, you know, when I first started practicing, quite challenging is one way to put it, frustrating. And it's called cow's face pose. Now I could get into, there's actually legs involved as well. We're just going to do the arms. And really what cow's face looks like, really we would tuck, I'm going to take my left arm and tuck it behind. Now we're going to use this, we're going to use the wall, okay, to actively brace our arm. And that actually allows me to take the arm. You can see I've got my fingers here, perhaps right there. It's come through, okay. And then you can work the arm up into the upper or mid back. So you can see, using the wall for resistance, I brought my hand to here, okay? And then you would inhale the other arm up, and you may get those fingers joined like that, okay? And so you're getting kind of a 2-for stretch, extending one shoulder and flexing the other. Now, a couple of things here. In order to facilitate this stretch, if you feel like you're popping open like that, then don't bind the hands. Instead, use the blanket or the strap. It doesn't have to be a lot, okay? So what I would suggest here, if you're going to use it, just drape it over your back, okay, like that, like so, okay? Arm comes in, so I'm going to start with left arm, pressing the tricep into the wall. You can see I can actually grab my other arm now, it's that far out, okay? Work the palm up, but this time, you can see I'm moving the strap, I'm grabbing the strap, okay? And then, with that bit of resistance, I'm gonna inhale up, okay? Exhale down, and rather than trying to grab fingers, okay, which takes either a super mobile set of shoulders or a lot of practice, okay? We're here, and I'm just trying to bring the hands toward one another using the strap or the blanket or the tea towel or whatever it is you've got to do so. Okay, and I'm just going to move away from the wall to show you that version. Breathing. Let's take another 2 or 3 breaths here. I'm going to come back into the support of the wall. And it really is easier. Feels nicer. It allows you to kind of explore the pose differently. And gently, and I mean gently, release. Okay? And then if you had the strap, if you're using the strap of the blanket, we're working with our right arm as upper arm. I'm just going to take the strap onto the other side, okay, because we're going to now move in the other side. And I actually want to show, without the strap here for a second, and without the wall, how each body is different. So I can bind my hands on the other side, you just saw that, but you'll notice here, on this side, not so much, okay? Everybody's a little different. So, and there's the proof. So, strap over the left shoulder, okay? Right outer arm, tricep, into the wall, and really step in. You can see, there's the fingers, okay? Work them up, and reach for the strap. And I actually have to come off the wall to get the strap. Got it. Back in, good, okay? And then inhale, other arm up, and now we're gonna breathe. Exhale, reach for the strap, and then breathe here, using the wall for some support. Notice the head wanting to kind of sneak through, ramp it back. Couple more breaths. And gently release. Especially if you've bound yourself using a towel or strap or something, go slow. Because if you kind of let go all at once, it's like, and all of that tension is released, and it's released into your body, okay? We're literally going to go into final pose. There's so many I could have chosen, but because like I said, there are 24 different poses, and I had a few others. But let's do just one more that's down on the mat, and then from there, because it's just such a nice way to end. And then this can either be your ending pose, or if this is not comfortable for you, certainly taking corpse pose, so lying down and recline, is going to work. Or, in fact, what am I saying? We're going to skip that. I was going to do a pose that is really nice, but we'll work that into the next practice. Instead, let's actually end with our legs up on the wall. That's a nice place for us to end, and it continues with the use of the wall. Okay? So, if we're going to do this, now a couple of things. Mat at the wall, kind of a must, particularly if you have a bony spine. I don't really myself these days need much of a support blanket-wise, but it can be nice just to give yourself a little bit of height, okay, where your hips are gonna land, okay? So what I'm gonna do is just scooch up close to the wall, okay, in this little crouch position here, so you can see feet on the floor, knees bent, sitting up straight. And then I'm going to use the wall and actually come down to lie down. So there's next step, okay? And then from there, I'm going to use my hand on the wall, lift my legs, and you'll have to slide back. And legs are up the wall. And then when you are here, we're going to breathe. Now notice, I'm going to give you a few variations. So you can stay with this for 10-15 breaths to close the practice out. I'll breathe with the puppy like I am. Just got a nice big exhale into my left ear from the dog. So you can certainly stay here. On my next breath, what I'm going to do is change my leg position. And rather than this being
This is sort of the lying down equivalent of staff pose, where we're seated with our legs in front of us. Okay, stretch head straight. And again, I should have said too, your arms can be extended out to the sides. Oh, hello, pal. You can bring them up into a cactus pose if that's more comfortable. You can push your cockapoo out of the way if he's part of the practice. Okay, good. Whatever position your arms are in, you could also take your legs, try to avoid ornaments, take them wide. And if that works for you, cool. And if it doesn't, come back up to where you were. Notice how that changes your breathing, if at all. And you can stay there, or return to where we were, or final option is to come into a legs up the wall version of cobbler's pose or butterfly pose. Okay, so the soles of the feet are going to come together, knees going away from one another, and breathing here. For the barking. I dare say, hen, enough, that the barking, or the equivalent of barking that we, for the most part, would have would be our own minds saying, you know, attend to this, what's next, what do I have left to do, what about this thing that happened? Just let all of that go, or let the dog bark. Breathe here and integrate the practice. From here, if your knees are spread wide, maybe bring them in together and you're in a little crouch. And then you might even give yourself a hug those knees in, and then gently, and with support of your left arm, just so you're not falling off the wall, allow those legs to come down. And then you can prop your head with that left arm. And just chill here for a moment. Okay. Use the right leg, the right fingers, prop yourself up. And organize yourself in a way that feels comfortable to end the practice. Remember what I said about the shape I'm taking right now. If that's comfortable, awesome. If it's not, pick something that is. That might be lying down too, by the way. All right. Just pause for a second. No need to do anything. (2022), here we are. Once again, new year, new you. Literally. It's true. So, thank yourself for making the time to come out and join the group today. A quiet group, too. Not that there's any merit or demerit in that. It's all good. And I thank all of you for joining us live. Denisa, how about that? Or on the recording after the fact. And like I say, notice how you feel before you even get up and moving around. It's a funny thing that it can, with all of the talking and moving about, kind of pausing and explaining and so on, that it can have that effect. But again, at least, and this isn't me tooting my own horn. I don't even feel like I'm doing this. I'm being practiced, if that makes sense.
I hope that makes sense. I didn't just get too meta or anything there, but like really, like I feel way more open and kind of just like there's space in my shoulders and my upper rib cage and down through the sides of my body. And we only scratch the surface. There's definitely a part 2, if not a part 3, that we can do with this, but that'll have to wait for another day. So, peace in, peace out. Wishing you all the best for the new year. If namaste is how you close the practice, namaste. Namaste. And that's it. Any questions? Oh, sorry, I see a message there, but I'm totally blind. I see that it popped up. I couldn't actually read it. There we go. I'm just going to say wave goodbye online and stop the video there. Take care of yourselves, peeps.